be useful. Anything else that an operative might need on assignment was expected to be bought in theatre, as ASW called it, and he provided us with a company credit card for the purpose, although any purchases were tightly scrutinised to ensure that they were absolutely necessary. Not that Simpson White was exceptionally mean toward its employees. In fact, quite the reverse. Operatives travelled business class on long-haul flights so as to be rested and ready for work immediately on arrival, and provision of a comfortable car with a driver was the norm, as were 4- and 5-star hotels. "I need my staff fresh," ASW would say, and he would charge his clients accordingly. Retired Colonel Anthony Simpson White had established Simpson White Consultancy Limited in the mid-1990s, partly with his lump-sum retirement benefit paid on completion of 18 years' exemplary service in the British Army. But ASW had not been a fighting soldier. He was a lawyer. He had served as a senior officer in the advisory branch of the Army Legal Corps, dispensing advice on military and international law to Prime Ministers and the High Command, including during British wars in the South Atlantic, Persian Gulf, and Bosnia. "I spent most of my time telling the bigwigs what they really didn't want to hear," he'd once said, by explanation of why he had finally resigned his commission, even when tipped to be a future Director-General of Army Legal Services. "Not that things have changed much since," he'd added with a laugh, "except the bigwigs now pay me more for the privilege." He'd started as a one-man operation, giving legal advice and opinions to companies in financial or operational difficulty, using the same authoritative and blunt manner that he'd employed at the Ministry of Defence. The company directors might also have not liked hearing what he had to say, but he had an uncanny knack of cutting through the chaff to the meat of a problem before offering a lifeline, palatable or otherwise. It was then up to the company to decide whether to accept or reject his recommendations, to survive or go under. And ASW was never one to stand idly by and say nothing when he believed that his intervention would help. One of his favourite sayings was, "If you live without making a difference, what difference does it make that you have lived?" Over the years his reputation had grown, and so had his business, so much so that he now had 10 operatives working under his watchful eye, and there was talk of recruiting numbers 11 and 12. Most of us were lawyers, but there was also an ex-Special Forces sergeant, plus 2 financial whiz-kids enticed from the city, not so much by a huge paycheck, but by the promise of a more varied and exciting life. And varied and exciting it had proved to be. I was operative number 7, 007, I like to think, and I'd been with the company for almost 7 years, having become bored with transferring titles, drawing up wills, and submitting divorce petitions, the staple diet of a local small-town attorney in rural Devon. One particular wet and tedious Wednesday afternoon in Totnes, I had spotted a small, understated advert in the corner of the jobs section of the Law Society Gazette. Vis mutare aliquid magis excitando tuum was all it said, with a London telephone number alongside. Vis mutare aliquid magis excitando tuum. I'd done a year of Latin at school, but clearly not enough. I typed the words into an online translator, and it spat out, "You want to change to something more exciting?" On a whim, I called the number. "Can you come to our offices for an assessment?" asked a female voice immediately, without so much as a hello. "Certainly," I replied. "When?" "As soon as possible," said the voice. "Where?" I asked. "That is your assessment. Don't call this number again, or you will have failed." She had then hung up, leaving me baffled but intrigued. I remember having sat staring at the phone in my hand, quite expecting it to ring as the woman called me back. But she didn't.